There's a silent lie you've been taught since childhood, that over-explaining is a sign of maturity, that justifying yourself shows character, that begging for understanding demonstrates humility. But here's the truth few dare to say: the more you try to explain yourself, the less respected you are. Sounds harsh? It is, but it's real. And Machiavelli already made this clear by observing human behavior without filters, politics guided by reality, not ideals. The world doesn't respond to your intentions, it responds to your posture. And when you constantly put yourself in the position of needing to prove something, you automatically position yourself below. No matter how right you are, how you behave defines how you will be treated. And most people are trapped in this cycle without realizing it. Now think about it. How many times have you tried to explain something and left the conversation feeling diminished? How many times have you insisted on being understood by someone who had already decided not to listen to you? How many times have you asked, insisted, tried to adjust, and in the end only wasted energy? This is not a coincidence, this is a pattern. Because while you try to convince, the other person assesses your need. And need in the social game is weakness. Machiavelli would summarize this directly. It is better to be feared than loved, but above all, avoid being hated. And this is not achieved by begging for validation. It is achieved with posture, with silence, with presence, and above all, with the absence of need. Because those who need too much surrender their own power without realizing it. And it is precisely here that everything begins to change. Because when you understand that you don't need to explain everything, you don't need to react to everything, you don't need to prove anything, you move from a state of defensiveness to a state of control. And this control isn't about dominating others, it's about not being dominated. Throughout this content, you will realize something uncomfortable but liberating. Many of the things you do today, believing they help you, actually weaken you. And when you start to break these patterns, something different happens. People start to look at you differently, treat you differently, and more importantly, you start to see yourself differently. But this requires a radical change of mindset, one that few are willing to make, but that separates those who constantly ask for space from those who simply occupy it. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. He began to realize something most people ignore. It wasn't time that was lacking. It was direction. While everyone around him complained about packed schedules, he saw something deeper. Attention was being wasted as if it were infinite. And it isn't. Machiavelli already hinted at this when he spoke about decisions based on real human nature. Whoever controls the focus, controls the game. His mind began to function as an implacable filter. Empty conversations, cut off, useless content, eliminated. People who only complain, kept at a distance. He began to treat his attention as a financial asset, something that needs to generate a return. And here's a strategic point. When you understand that your attention is limited, you automatically begin to apply a policy guided by reality, not by ideals. There's no point in trying to embrace everything. That's fantasy. He began to ask himself before any decision, does this bring me closer to or further away from what I want to build? Simple and brutally effective. And little by little, something curious began to happen. Less distraction, more clarity, less noise, more power. But that was just the beginning. In everyday life, this translates into practical actions that almost no one dares to take. For example, he stopped opening his cell phone as soon as he woke up. Instead, he started the day reading something that strengthened his mind. Books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or even strategic excerpts from The Prince, became mental fuel. Social media, only at set times. Notifications, disabled. He created blocks of deep focus of 1 to 2 hours a day, without interruptions. This alone has already put him years ahead of the average. And here comes a powerful concept: virtu and fortuna. Most people think that luck defines the game, but they don't realize that preparation shapes opportunity. By protecting his attention, he was literally training his mind to recognize opportunities that others don't even see. And the more he did this, the more evident it became. It's not about doing more, it's about choosing better. But this choice requires something that few master: emotional discipline. And this leads to an even deeper point, because ultimately, protecting your attention isn't just about productivity, it's about power. It's about understanding that every time you react to something irrelevant, you're surrendering control. And Machiavelli was clear on this. The calculated use of force isn't always about acting. Often it's about not acting. He began to realize that the world tries to hijack his attention all the time. News, opinions, provocations, expectations. All of this is an invisible struggle for control. And whoever doesn't realize this becomes a pawn in someone else's game. So he decided to do something different. He started to become selective, even with what he felt. If something didn't add value, it didn't deserve energy. If someone didn't contribute, they didn't deserve space. This created a powerful side effect. People started to notice. His presence became rarer, more focused, more valuable. And this is where something starts to change in the social dynamic around him, because when you control your attention, you naturally stop reacting as before. And that starts to bother a lot of people. He learned something that completely changes the game. Those who talk too much reveal too much, and those who reveal too much lose power. At first, it seemed strange, remaining silent while someone provoked, criticized, or tried to belittle him. His mind screamed for a response, for defense, for justification. But that's when he began to understand one of the most uncomfortable truths of human nature. Most people don't want to understand, they want to win. And when you enter that game, you've already lost. Machiavelli dealt with this coldly and precisely. Better to be feared than loved. But above all, avoid being hated. And silence, when used well, does exactly that. It doesn't fuel conflict, but it also doesn't submit to it. It's a form of presence that doesn't beg for validation. And when he began to apply this, he realized something curious. His silence spoke louder than any argument he could construct. Because while the other person expected a reaction, he delivered absence, and that is disconcerting. In practice, this began to appear in simple situations. In a meeting, for example, when someone tried to indirectly question his competence, he didn't engage in emotional debate. He listened, maintained eye contact, and responded only as needed, without justifying, without over-explaining, without trying to convince. And this completely changes the dynamic. Because when you don't try to prove anything, you automatically convey confidence. It's what Machiavelli would call the appearance of virtue, not in a superficial sense, but strategically. You don't need to say you're strong, you behave like someone who doesn't need to prove strength. Another example, personal discussions. Before, he tried to explain his point, to be understood, to resolve everything through dialogue. Now, he chooses when it's worthwhile to speak and when silence is more powerful, because he understood that not every conversation deserves a response, and not every person deserves access to his energy. This is the calculated use of force, knowing exactly when to act and when not to. And this is where the psychological game begins to turn, because silence creates something few people know how to handle: uncertainty. When you don't react, the other person starts filling the void with assumptions. Did he ignore it? Did he not care? Did I cross the line? This kind of doubt corrodes, and meanwhile, you remain unscathed. This creates a kind of silent respect, not based on words, but on posture. And over time, people begin to adjust to your behavior. They think twice before provoking you, before testing you, because they realize they won't get the reaction they expect. And that is power. Silent power, but extremely effective. But there is an inevitable side effect. The less you react, the rarer you become. And when something becomes rare, it begins to gain value in a way that most people don't understand. He realized something that bothers him, but is real. The easier it is to reach you, the less respected you are. At first, this seems counterintuitive. After all, they taught that being accessible, available, and always present is a sign of kindness. But in practice, this often translates into silent attrition. Machiavelli already warned about the importance of constant adaptability and a cold reading of reality. People value what they don't easily possess. And when your presence is always guaranteed, without limits, without criteria, it loses weight. He began to observe patterns. Those who responded immediately to everyone were ignored when needed. Those who were always available were only called upon when convenient. That's when he understood. It's not about rejecting people, but about establishing value. And value is born from scarcity. This isn't ego, it's strategy. It's politics guided by reality, not by ideals. In practice, he began to do something simple, yet extremely powerful: reduce his availability without announcing it. He stopped immediately responding to all messages. He didn't accept every invitation. He started to be more selective about who he invested his time with. And the curious thing is that by doing this, people began to react differently. Some found it strange, others began to respect him more. Because absence, when well placed, communicates something powerful: priority. He was no longer reacting to the world, he was choosing. This connects directly to the principle of virtu and fortuna. He created the conditions for the right opportunities to appear, instead of getting lost in any stimulus. A practical example: instead of spending hours in unproductive conversations, he began to invest that time in developing skills that increase his value: communication, strategic reading, even analysis of human behavior. While others disperse energy, he accumulates a silent advantage. And then comes the part that few understand. Scarcity isn't total absence, it's selective presence. He didn't disappear. He became intentional. When he appeared, he was truly present. When he spoke, he carried weight. When he took a stand, he was heard. This completely changes the perception of those around him. Because human beings respond to patterns, and when you break the pattern of excessive availability, you automatically differentiate yourself. This is the calculated use of force in its most subtle form. And without realizing it, he began to build something that cannot be forced: natural respect. But along with this respect comes an even deeper psychological effect. Because when you're not always available, people start thinking about you even in your absence. And this creates a kind of invisible tension that opens space for an even more intriguing power. He began to see an invisible pattern in human interactions. Almost everything is an attempt to generate a reaction, a provocation, a criticism, a passive-aggressive comment. All of this is a disguised invitation to enter an emotional game, and most people accept without realizing it. But when he began to observe this coldly, something changed. He understood that reacting is often obeying, and it was at that moment that he began to apply one of the most powerful strategies ever described, not responding to the impulse. Machiavelli already pointed to this when talking about decisions based on real human nature. Human beings need validation, a response, recognition. When you deny this, you break the expected flow. And this creates an extremely uncomfortable psychological phenomenon for the other person, the so-called open loop. The person gets stuck trying to understand your lack of reaction. Meanwhile, you continue, without wear and tear, without noise, without loss of energy. And this is not weakness, it is mastery. In everyday life, this manifests itself in very practical ways. Imagine someone trying to provoke you with a veiled insult. Before, they would react, explain, defend themselves, perhaps even attack back. Now, they simply don't engage. They don't respond in the same tone. They don't justify themselves. In many cases, they don't respond at all. And when they do respond, it's neutral, brief, almost cold. This completely dismantles the other person's expectation, because whoever provokes expects an impact. And when that impact doesn't come, the mind goes into conflict. Another example, social media. Negative comments, gratuitous criticism. Before, they felt the need to respond, to set things straight. Today, they understand that this is an attention trap, and as someone who values their focus, they ignore it. This is a calculated use of force, not wasting energy where there is no strategic return. And curiously, the less they react, the more control they have over the situation. But the most interesting point isn't about the other person, it's about himself. Because to not react requires something rare, self-control, and that's built with practice. He began to observe his own triggers, what irritated him, what made him want to respond, what stirred his ego. And instead of acting automatically, he started to pause, to breathe, to evaluate. That small pause changed everything. Because between stimulus and response, there is a space, and it is in that space that power is born. This is directly linked to the idea of avoiding being hated. When you don't engage in unnecessary conflicts, you preserve your image and your energy. And over time, something curious happens. People start to get tired of trying to hurt you, because there's no return, there's no fuel, and then they give up. But while that's happening, you begin to realize something even more important. Not every conflict deserves to be won. Some simply don't deserve to be fought. He realized something most people avoid admitting. Not everyone deserves to remain in your life, and more, some people only stay because you haven't yet had the courage to act. At first, he tried to justify it, give it another chance, understand the other person's side. But over time, he realized this was just an elegant way to postpone difficult decisions. Machiavelli already warned with brutal honesty. The end justifies the means, as long as you know exactly what end you are seeking. And if the goal is to grow, evolve, and maintain your sanity, then certain connections need to be ended, not with drama, not with long explanations, but with clarity. He began to see patterns, people who seemed like allies but silently rooted against you. People who criticized everything but never built anything, and those who simply drained energy, always bringing problems, never solutions. And then came the turning point. He understood that keeping these people around wasn't kindness, it was self-neglect. In practice, he began to silently classify those around him. First category, disguised adversaries. Those who smile but silently compete with you, diminish your achievements, and make subtle comments to destabilize you. These are dangerous because they operate in the subtext. Second category, chronic critics. Everything you do is wrong. It's never enough. There's always a problem. They don't want to help you. They want to drag you down. Third category, energy drainers. They live in chaos, complain all the time, and when you realize it, you're already emotionally exhausted just from being around them. And then he made practical decisions. He reduced contact, stopped sharing plans, created strategic distance. In some cases, he cut it off completely, without announcement, without justification, without unnecessary confrontation. This is calculated use of force, acting with precision, not emotion. And in doing so, something unexpected happened. Space began to emerge, because when you remove what drains you, you create space for what strengthens you, and that changes everything. He began to feel more clarity, more energy, more focus. Conversations became more productive, the atmosphere lighter, his mind clearer. And here comes a crucial point from Machiavelli: your own loyal armies. It's not about having many people around you, but the right ones. People who add value, who challenge constructively, who respect your journey. But to build this kind of environment, you first need to clear the ground. And that requires something few have: silent courage. Because cutting isn't comfortable, but keeping what pulls you down costs much more. And the more he did this, the more he realized that the real challenge wasn't dealing with others. It was mastering himself. Because in the end, it's not just external people who affect you, there are internal forces that also need to be controlled. He realized something that completely changes the way you live. The real enemy isn't outside, it's inside. It's not the words of others that hurt. It's the triggers those words activate. And as long as those triggers exist unchecked, anyone with the slightest perception can manipulate you. It was at this point that he began to apply a deeper reading of reality, exactly as Machiavelli advocated. Decisions based on real human nature, including his own. He began to observe emotional patterns, what irritated him, what made him react, what stirred his ego. And he realized that often it wasn't the event itself, but the automatic interpretation. This was a shock, because it means that control was never outside. And from there, he began to build something rare: emotional sovereignty. Not in the sense of not feeling, but of not being controlled by what he feels. And that changes everything. In practice, he began to train this deliberately. When something bothered him, instead of reacting, he analyzed, why did this affect me? Was it insecurity, ego, fear of judgment? This simple question already broke the automatic pattern. He also began to expose himself in a controlled way to situations that previously destabilized him. For example, criticism. Instead of avoiding it, he began to listen without interrupting. At first, uncomfortable, then liberating. Another powerful exercise: delaying the reaction. When he felt the urge to respond to something emotionally, he waited. Minutes, hours, sometimes a whole day. And often, he realized it wasn't even worth responding. This is calculated use of force applied to the inner world. And over time, he began to notice something interesting. The less reactive he became, the less people could affect him. Because without reaction, there is no leverage. But the most profound point comes now. When you master your triggers, you cease to be predictable. And predictability is weakness in the social game. Machiavelli spoke of constant adaptability, and this begins within one's own mind. He began to respond differently than expected, sometimes with silence, sometimes with lightness, sometimes with total indifference. This breaks patterns, and when you break patterns, you gain an advantage, because the other person doesn't know how to read you. And this generates respect, caution, even admiration. But this internal construction brings an inevitable consequence. You begin to realize that many conflicts were never about you. They were merely reflections of others. And this completely changes how you choose where to act. and where to simply let time resolve things. He reached a point where he understood something few accept. Not every victory requires action. Some require restraint. At the beginning of his journey, there was a constant impulse to react, correct, respond, adjust everything around him. An almost automatic need to do something in the face of any situation. But with time, and with a more detached reading of reality, he realized that this impulse was not strength, it was anxiety disguised as control. Machiavelli already indicated this with surgical precision. The true strategist understands timing. Virtù and fortuna are not just action and opportunity, they are also waiting and reading the right moment. He began to realize that many conflicts wear themselves down, many tensions dissolve without intervention, many people reveal themselves over time. And by intervening too early, you interfere with the very process that would solve the problem for you. That's when he began to apply something powerful, strategic inaction, not as a mission, but as a decision. In his daily life, this began to manifest practically. Instead of reacting immediately to a tense situation, he waited, he observed. He let the scenario unfold. Often the other person contradicted themselves, exposed themselves, or lost strength over time. In professional environments, for example, he stopped engaging in unnecessary disputes. Instead of trying to win every conversation, he began to choose which ones truly mattered. This is decision-making based on real human nature, understanding that other people's egos often self-destruct if you don't feed them. Another example, interpersonal conflicts. Before, he sought to resolve everything immediately. Now, he understands that some things require silence, space, and time. And here comes an essential principle. Avoiding being hated doesn't mean pleasing others. It means not getting involved in pointless wars, because every battle has a cost. And whoever fights them all, loses them all. And then comes the highest level of this understanding. The power of not moving creates tension, and this tension works in your favor. When you don't react, don't chase after things, don't try to control, you become unpredictable. And that changes the dynamics of the game. People start to adjust to you, not the other way around. This is the calculated use of force in its most refined form, acting less but with absolute precision. He came to understand that power is not the volume of action, it's the quality of decision, and that often the most intelligent move is to do nothing. But this kind of posture requires something rare: confidence. Confidence in oneself, in the process, and in the reading of reality. Because while most act on impulse, he chooses, and this silent choice is what separates those who live reacting from those who truly control the game. Now let me ask you a direct question, and without filter. How long will you continue surrendering your power in exchange for acceptance? How long will you continue explaining yourself to those who have already decided not to understand you? Begging for attention from those who only show up when it's convenient? Reacting to everything as if every provocation were urgent? If you stop for a moment and look honestly, you'll realize that much of the exhaustion you feel today doesn't come from the world. It comes from the concessions you make every day. And that's not judgment, it's awareness, because from the moment you see that, you also realize you can change. And change at that level doesn't require more effort. It requires a decision. So it starts simply. Where is your attention being wasted? Who is draining your energy? In what situations do you react without thinking? What are you still trying to prove? And to whom? These questions aren't comfortable, but they're necessary. Because the power you seek isn't in doing more, it's in cutting out what shouldn't exist. And that's pure strategy. It's the calculated use of force. It's understanding that the end justifies the means, as long as the end is your emotional freedom, your clarity, your evolution. And here's something essential. You don't need to change everything at once, but you need to start. Today. Now. Even if it's with a single different decision, an answer you don't give, an explanation you don't offer, a person you choose not to prioritize. Small cuts, big transformations. And now I want to know from you, which of these laws resonated with you the most? Which one do you feel you need to apply to your life immediately? Write it in the comments, because sometimes putting it into words is already the first step to change. And if this kind of content makes you think differently, act differently, then you already know what to do. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, because here we don't talk about what's comfortable. We talk about what works. And the more you understand the game, the less you are controlled by it.